Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to Growing Through It, a podcast dedicated to bringing you clarity so that you can harness your curiosity and be the creator of your life. Hosted by me, Shanae Rowe. Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. This one is episode 4, and it's all about fear, the truth behind our fear, and what it's really telling us. So I think before I dive into this one, what I want to do is give you guys the definition of what fear is, because I think in order for us to understand things, or at least for me, it's really helpful to have a clear understanding of what something is or what something means. And yeah, for me, especially, I love writing and I love being able to understand the truth behind a word so that I can use it in a more sort of insightful way. So, the definition of fear for you guys, it is defined as an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Which, a lot of us know this, but yeah, that is actually the straightforward definition. When you look it up in Google, put in your little Safari, get your phones out, and just fear definition, that's what it'll tell you. So when we think about it like this, we can break it down a little bit and understand that fear is a natural response to an unfamiliar environment or situation. It can be both physical and mental. So if you think about something physical where fear is involved, I instantly go to lions. I don't know why, but I don't know if they actually scare me, but I know that if I was out in the wild and saw a lion, I would be shitting myself. I would be so scared, which is fair enough. And some of you guys might have this real big fear of snakes and spiders, and they are legitimate fears, or even a fear of mine is falling off of a cliff. I hate walking up to the edge of cliffs without railing. It's beautiful, don't get me wrong, I love nature so much and I love standing on the edge of something, but as soon as I look down, my mind is you could fall and you could die and that would be it, and that scares the crap out of me. But yeah, they're actual physical fears. Our minds are going crazy because those fears literally can kill us. But what I want to talk to you guys about today is more our psychological fear and our mental fear, because I feel there is quite a lot of hidden message in the things that scare us. And so if we think about fear as a natural response to doing something new and challenging and being exposed to the unfamiliar, then we can start to understand that fear is really an invitation for us to grow and develop in certain areas of our lives. So, what I like to do when I am experiencing fear is ask myself some questions. I like to ask myself, what is the danger? So if we bring it back to the lion example, the danger is quite literally being chased and eaten by a lion. The danger is your death. But if we bring it back to a mental fear, something that scares us, so for example, a fear of rejection. What is the danger? The danger is being rejected by someone or something. It's not feeling adequate or good enough. All right. And then I like to ask myself, how does it feel within my body and in my mind? What is my body's response to this fear? It could be I get a really tight chest, or my hands get clammy, or I get brain fog, my mind isn't working properly, I'm breathing heavily, or I'm breathing really shallow and quickly. This is sort of where our fight, flight, and freeze responses come in. So when we are experiencing fear, our bodies have a natural response. So fight, flight, freeze happens when we are experiencing fear. And even if we're not experiencing a fear that is physical, such as getting chased by a lion, our minds can't really recognize that. We're in the 21st century, there are completely different problems and issues going on that don't really relate to being attacked by wild animals. But our minds haven't really been able to recognize that yet. So we tend to go into a fight, flight, freeze response. So, if a fear comes up for you, do you try and run away from it? Do you sort of mentally, do you just ignore it? Do you push it aside and do all these other things on top of it to try and make yourself forget that you're experiencing fear, that something's going on within your body? Do you fight your fear? Do you beat yourself up about why you're feeling this way? Do you not acknowledge how you're feeling? Do you ignore what's going on in your mind and your body because you don't want to address the deeper issue going on? Or do you flee? Do you just get out of there? Do you run away from your issues? Do you just pretend that they're non-existent, like your fear is like a fear, but holy crap, I've got to go and like distract myself and do something else because like I can't with this right now. I got to get out of there and try something new that doesn't involve me addressing the root of what I'm scared about. Or do you freeze? This is my way of coping with my fear. I hope I'm not alone in this, but yeah, do you freeze? Do you get so overwhelmed by your fear that you literally can't think about anything else and you can't do anything else and you overthink yourself into a perpetual state of like frozenness? Like you literally can't do anything. You think yourself into quicksand. So yeah, pay attention to your response to fear, how it feels within your body. Think about what you tell yourself when you are scared about doing something. And then I also like to ask myself the question of, is it real? And I'm not meaning, is it real like, should you be afraid of this or not? I mean, is it a perceived threat, or is your mind just creating this anxious narrative that is false surrounding something that you're scared about? So, again, like taking it back to the lion example, that is quite literally a real life threat. Like, you do need to get out of there so that you don't die. But a lot of the times, our minds have fears about things that are just perceived. It's a fear about an outcome of something happening. A lot of the time it's anxiety, and it's something that our mind has created. It's told us this big story about the outcome of something or our beliefs in something, and it creates all these false narratives about the outcomes of if something happens. Like, if I be vulnerable with this person, I'm going to get rejected, and I know from my past experience that rejection fucking hurts, so I'm not going to be vulnerable with somebody. Like, that is a fear. Like, that is our mind creating a false narrative about something because of past experiences that have led us to believe that something is true. As well as this, it's a good thing to ask yourself why. Why is it scary? Why is your fear, your psychological fear, why is it scary? And I think for me personally, what I have found is that there are limiting beliefs attached to your fears. So, fear tends to come up when we have limiting beliefs that we have been conditioned to believe, or um, beliefs that we have grown up believing because of our family or friends or environment that don't serve us anymore. And the reason we feel fear is because we as an individual are being asked to address what's actually going on. So, why is it scary tends to be a big question to unpack, because it's not just as simple as I'm going to die because I'm going to get eaten by a lion. It's actually a lot more to do with our past, our childhoods, our upbringings, all the things that have happened to us that have allowed us to create these narratives and stories in our minds. So, in saying that, our fears tend to challenge us to address beliefs that no longer serve us. You wouldn't be scared about something if there wasn't a deeper reasoning going on behind the scenes. So, like I was saying earlier, think of rejection. So, why do we fear rejection? It's a big one, especially for all of us in our 20s, in our early 20s, mid 20s, and even later. Like, it is a big fear that a lot of us have. And if you go deep into that, what you will find is that our fear of rejection actually comes from a place of craving deep intimacy and connection with yourself and with other people. So when we have this fear of rejection, it's probably safe to assume that we're not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with other people, and especially not with ourselves. A lot of the times, if we fear getting let down by other people, if we are scared of, if we're scared of not getting the job, if we're scared of opening up to someone and them not liking us back, then we're going to hold ourselves back. We're not allowing ourselves to truly understand who we are by being vulnerable and asking ourselves questions. Another one is breakups. And I don't know what's worse, getting broken up with or breaking up with someone, but in my experience, breakups, they suck. And we tend to put off breaking up with someone for such a long time because, one, we don't want to upset them. We don't want to hurt someone that has been a big part of our lives. But it also has a lot of limiting beliefs and fears attached to it. And one of the big ones is a fear of being alone. Especially in those longer term relationships where you're with somebody for years, it can be really hard to believe that you can live a life without that person. And so, yeah, that can be a real big fear for somebody coming out of a relationship. But I think what it is trying to tell us when we do have that fear of being alone, of being an individual again and not in a partnership, it's telling us that we need to work on our relationship with ourselves and we need to get comfortable in our own company again. So, yeah, I think if you think about fear in this way, you can start to understand that our fears are signposts pointing us towards our desires and our truths. And I think when you have a fear, it's actually showing you a really deep desire that you have. Because our minds can only create something it believes can become a reality. And fear is the natural response to a challenge that we're facing that doesn't have any known solutions at that point. So, yeah, like our minds will create all of these beautiful visions and ambitions and goals, and it'll just paint a picture of a life that our hearts really crave and desire. But then fear jumps in because it's like, hang on a minute, we don't know how to do that. And we have all of these limiting beliefs and ideas that actually don't match up with the lifestyle that you're creating in your head. Like this little fairy tale about the life you want to live doesn't seem possible because of all of these things that we've experienced that have told us like that it's not achievable. Fear shows up as sort of a roadblock there. And if you listen to it, if you don't run away from it, if you actually try and work through it, it'll show you that once you overcome all of the internal challenges that are preventing you from chasing your desires, you will achieve them. In my experience, fear is the one thing you should never ever ignore. Fear in this sense is not something that you should shy away from. It's not something you should ignore. A lot of the times, fear is actually a blessing in disguise. It is such a beautiful piece of wisdom that we can harness in order to develop ourselves and create a life that we really, really, really want. But yeah, on the other hand, if you do listen to your fear, you will come to recognize that it is a temporary solution to a much deeper problem. So let's bring it back to relationships and breaking up with someone. If you are really scared about breaking up with someone that you love, because you're afraid of being alone, you're not sure what is going to happen, you're not sure what's going to happen when you don't spend a big chunk of your time with this person. You can listen to that. You can listen to your fear. You can be like, oh, well, I'm scared about breaking up with this person, so I'm just not going to do it. Surely, my fear about doing it, surely me being scared about this big decision means that I shouldn't do it. And you can go on living like that. You can listen to your fear, but you will come to notice that you will abandon yourself time and time again, and you will let yourself down, and you will build this resentment towards yourself and your partner because you refuse to actually address your fear. You refuse to go a little bit deeper and ask yourself, maybe I'm scared because I have some belief within me that doesn't align with who I want to be anymore. So I think like one thing to remember is always that your fear is not permanent. All right. It's not going to last forever. It's only an indication of something a lot deeper going on. It will pass. You will get over it. But in order to get over it, you have to address what's going on, and you have to find solutions that will actually solve the problem that you're dealing with. You have to find solutions that will work with your limiting beliefs. And you can't slap a band-aid on your fear by just saying, yup, it's right. I should listen to what I'm scared of. That'll never work. And you won't live your life in a way that feels true to you if you keep listening to what you're scared of. And our minds want to keep us safe by telling us, like, yeah, we're scared about this. Like, oh my God, fight, flight, freeze. Like, do whatever you need to do to keep yourself safe. Just don't address your limiting beliefs going on. Like, our brains want to tell us that because it's easier. It's a lot easier to live like that than to sit yourself down and be like, hey, I know that I don't want to break up with this person because I am chronically scared of my own company. I don't know who I am, but I really want to. And so if we can look at our fear in a really compassionate light and dissect the fear, dissect the limiting beliefs that are underneath it, then you can really start to see your own desires and the truth of who you are and the truth of the lifestyle that you want to live. So, I want to talk about some ways that we can feel safer in our fear because it's always going to be there. You're going to go through so much where you become scared of a situation or an outcome or yourself. So, instead of running away from our fear, it's really important to understand how to navigate it a little bit better. And first things first, have some self compassion. Show yourself some empathy. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle. Reparent yourself. That's a big one because a lot of our fears come from our childhoods, and it comes from the beliefs that our parents gave us, our teachers gave us, our living environments gave us. So there are a lot of opinions that come from the collective that don't really serve us anymore. And so we have to learn to be able to talk to ourselves and be gentle with ourselves through that time because it's really messy. It's a really hard time when we realize that our fears come from a belief that was taught to us. It's really important to be able to parent ourselves in a way that feels true to us, to hold ourselves accountable, to show ourselves empathy, to give ourselves some advice and some love. So that's probably the biggest way. How you do that is going to be really individual to yourself. We all have different needs and desires. So, yeah, really start to understand what feels good for you. Like, do you enjoy moving your body in order to show yourself love? Do you really like to journal? Do you like to sit down and talk to somebody? Do you like talking to a friend? But yeah, do the things that you need to do to show yourself love. Another thing that I find really helps feel safe in your own fear is giving yourself a little mantra. Tell yourself something, repeat something over and over. When you start to feel scared before you do something. So for me, like, this podcast is the scariest thing that I've ever done. Like, sitting down at my desk, plugging my microphone into my laptop and talking is so bloody scary because I have limiting beliefs that I don't have a voice that deserves to be heard. I have so much to unpack there. So anytime I'm about to sit down in front of this microphone, I repeat to myself, like, I am safe. I feel scared right now. This is completely normal because I'm trying to do something that I've never done before. Right? I do that. And I think it's such a helpful tool when we can acknowledge that we are feeling scared and that it is okay to feel scared because we're doing something that we've never done before. Another little mantra could be, my fear is valid. If we're talking about ending a relationship and being really scared about the outcome and what's going to happen when we're not with this person anymore, we can say something like, my fear is valid. Choosing to end a connection with someone who has been a big part of my life brings me a lot of uncertainty, and I feel really unsafe and really unsure thinking about my life with them. But I know it's the right decision for me. So something like that. As well, like if you have a fear of rejection in romantic relationships, you can, tell yourself, like if you're feeling really scared about being vulnerable, you can tell yourself, like, I really enjoy spending time with this person. I'm scared that they don't feel the same way. But instead of focusing on them, I'm going to turn all of my energy inwards and give myself the love and connection that I'm craving from them, but I'm too scared to be vulnerable about. There's a lot of ways that we can talk to ourselves and give ourselves little pep talks that help us move through the fear. And as well, like I want to tie this into the whole getting outside of our comfort zone. So I talked about this in episode 2. If you guys want to check that one out, I'll pop it in the episode description as well, or you can just find it. I've only got a handful of eps on here at the moment. But yeah, episode 2, I talk about comfort zones and uncertainty. But I think our fear really ties into that because once we address our fear, we're going to be outside of our comfort zone. We're going to be in a state of uncertainty and we're going to be scared, right? And our fear makes us want to go back to our comfort zones. It makes us want to go back to those limiting beliefs that we hold that don't serve us anymore, but we want to go back there because it's where we feel safe. So if we can start to feel comfortable being scared, if we can start to be compassionate and empathetic towards our fears, then it becomes a lot smoother and a lot easier to find our limiting beliefs there, to find what is holding us back. What are the systems in place that once worked for us that don't anymore? And how is that contributing to my fear? So yeah, that is another one. And just as well as that, be curious. Be curious about your fear. Be curious about why it is that you're scared, because you're going to be able to go really deep within yourself and move through that fear once you can compassionately understand why you feel it in the first place. So like I was saying before, for me, I feel really scared about speaking. And that comes from a lot of years in my childhood where I didn't feel seen or heard. And so I built this belief around I feel the safest when I'm not expressing myself, when I'm not sharing my opinions. That's where I feel safe because I don't feel like I deserve to take up space, right? And as well, for a fear of romantic rejection, you can like try and be curious about where that came from. Did something happen to you in your childhood where somebody let you down? Like, what are your relationships like with your parents? There's so much to think about in order to understand sort of where this fear is rooted, where it came from. Because like I said, the only way is through. You can only get comfortable in your fear once you understand where it comes from. So yeah, those are just some things that I really like to do to feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more safe when fear arises in my body. And it's not an easy process either. Like it's something to work on little bit by little bit. Like if you don't really know how to show yourself self-compassion, probably work on that one first. Like catch yourself when you're being negative to yourself and turn it into something positive. Turn it into, if you're like, oh my God, I can't do this, turn it into something else. Like, wow, I'm really proud of you for trying this. Those are just some ways to feel a little bit safer in your fear when it does arise. And I think it's really important to get comfortable in a state of fear and to be able to acknowledge when you feel scared about something, Because if we leave our fear unchecked, it can develop into some really unhealthy behaviors, things like procrastination and addiction and escaping from things. But I'll leave those for another episode because I think there is so much to unpack in the way that fear shows up in our lives when we don't actually address it. But yeah, anyways, I wanted to end this episode with a big question for you all, and I think it is such a good question. I got asked this a few weeks ago at an event by a complete stranger, but it really made me think about things. It really made me curious. And yeah, so I was on the dance floor in the dark with somebody at an event, and literally out of the blue, it was not the time or place to ask this question, but this person, he goes to me, "What's your biggest fear?" And I was so completely thrown off by it, but I thought it was such a good question. So I'm going to ask you guys, what is your biggest fear? Ask yourself that, right? And whatever comes to your mind first, try and unpack it. Try and think about why it is that you actually fear that and what it could actually be telling you. Because, like I have said, your fear points you towards something that you want to achieve. It points you towards something that you need to work on. And it's very specific to your own life, and it's very specific to your past, your present, your future. It's very individual, right? Your fear is very individual to you, and it might be, and even if it is a common fear, like a fear of rejection or a fear of being alone or a fear of, dying and not having achieved everything that you want to achieve, it might be a fear that is felt by the collective, but the reasoning behind it is very specific to your life and to the life you have lived. And as well, like I want to just like mention that you're probably not going to have this same fear throughout your whole life, because we are cyclical beings, and we go through phases. We learn from our perceptions of our experiences. So the more experiences we expose ourselves to, the more beliefs we develop, and then the more limiting beliefs that we have to address. So you right now might have a fear of, being rejected. You might have a fear that someone isn't going to love you back. And then 4 years from now, you might actually have worked through that fear and you're in a stable relationship, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I actually don't know who I am without this person, but I'm really scared of who I am. And then you have another fear to work through. So ask yourself, what is your biggest fear? Because it will show you the work that you need to do on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level. And it will show you the direction that you need to move towards in order to become a better version of yourself, in order to become the person that you see yourself becoming. Close your eyes and think about the life that you want to live in 5-10 years. Think about the person that you are. Think about the things in your life. What are you doing day to day, right? And if you think about how to get there, what fears come up? Paint that picture of your life, and the more that you try and strive towards that, the more that you're going to be faced with fears, things that scare you, because your life is asking you to level up. And the only way that you can level up is to move through your fear, to address the limiting beliefs attached to those fears, and then become the next version of yourself to live that amazing and beautiful life. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with that one. What is your biggest fear? Have a think for me. Don't think too hard about it. You might be like me and get yourself in a perpetual state of frozenness. But yeah, that's all from me today. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I love you all and appreciate it so much. If you like this episode, share it around, chuck it on your socials, tag me, let me know, share it with your friends, share it with your mum, share it with your dog. That is all from me today. I hope you guys have learnt something from this episode. And as always, the world is waiting for you, so get on out there and enjoy your big, beautiful life. Bye!